I'm gonna do it. Let's try it, Evan. What do you think?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah?
Long day down there today. Took their time after the game. I think Bill Belichick and Mac Jones both went last or towards the end of the line there. So I think Belichick in particular was maybe talking to some people after the game that were here, family, friends, things like that.
Savored it. Savored it. Or they were
Yeah.
negotiating Josh's the compensation for Josh.
I doubt it, but look, this is sort of what we were looking for. I don't want to come in
Yeah.
too negatively here in a 50-10
No,
blowout
you shouldn't.
win.
This was
It was what we were looking for. I think that there are some things that we can get to that I felt like. I think my biggest takeaway, honestly, is that I don't know if I learned anything about the team today.
I know.
I
That
think in a
was the
lot.
downside.
I
Yeah.
think in a lot of ways, this is what we wanted in terms of Mac Jones. I use this analogy in Patriots beat. He just needed to see some shots go through and see some shots go through the bottom of the net and get that swagger back and get that feeling back. And I think all of those things are really positive momentum for this game. If you play the type of zone coverages that Jacksonville was playing on early downs, and you give Mac Jones those underneath short zone throws where he's hitting Myers and hitting Henry, just breaking off the leverage and allowing them to work those voids and get in those soft spots of those zone coverages. His short game is as good as anybody's going right now, besides maybe the GOAT, right? Besides Tom Brady, I don't think anybody gets the ball out quickly, precisely, accurately, reads it out properly, gets it to the right guy, as well as Mac Jones, especially considering the fact that he's a first-year player. I also thought some of the good things about Mac today were his legs, right? And I think this continues to be something that they maybe are getting more out of than any of us could have actually expected. And that is moving the pocket, having him pick up first downs via scrambles. I don't know if we expected that from Mac when the Patriots drafted him. He makes that throw on the bootleg action, the rollout action to Christian Wilkerson in the back of the end zone. And that is a similar play to what they ran on fourth down against Buffalo last week, where he directed traffic and found Jacoby Myers in the middle of the field for the fourth down conversion. So getting out on the perimeter, getting outside the pocket. And then you also look at on third down man coverage situations, teams are playing single high man free, right? There's nobody in the box and they're putting 5 guys in the rush and they're putting 6 guys back into coverage. And now if you lose contain in the pocket and you give up a gap integrity type of thing, then Mac can beat you with his legs, right? And he can pick up 10 yards and he can move the chains that way too. So those are some really positive developments. We knew that Mac could play the short game. We knew that maybe there would be more rollouts, design pocket movement, things like that could benefit this offense and get this offense going. But with all that being said, and I understand that Christian Wilkerson dropped probably his best downfield throw of the game. And if he hits that one, then maybe my feelings on it are a whole lot different. I still don't feel like the Patriots threaten the deep part of the field at
That's the
all.
problem. Is like an explosive play for them is like 10 yards.
Right.
Like it's just not, there's no stressing the defense down the field.
Right. And if you're going to play a defense in the postseason, and right now the matchup is 4-5 Buffalo Patriots.
Yep.
Buffalo, we know, is going to hug up on those checkdowns. They're going to take away the middle of the field zone voids. They're going to make sure that Mac has to beat them down the field and outside the numbers. And it's not just Mac. It's also the fact that these receivers are who they are. And Hunter Henry and Jacoby Myers and Kendrick Bourne are his 3 most consistent pass catchers. And all 3 of those guys win and live in the short and intermediate areas of the field within 20 yards of the line of scrimmage. But there's no threat down the field still. Maybe Nelson Aguilar comes back and opens that back up a little bit more. But in order for me to get truly excited and exhilarated about beating the Jaguars, even at 50-10, I wanted to see them threaten the downfield passing game a little bit more. You throw one completion over 15 yards in the air the entire game. I just can't sit back and say we learned today the Patriots can beat man coverage down the field. We didn't learn that. We still don't think that's still a question mark. That's still something that's a potentially Achilles heel. So I hate to go negative with the fact that the Patriots played a good game here today and beat the doors off of a bad team. And I do think that there's a lot to be said about the mojo, about the swagger, about the feeling that you get after a game when you beat the doors off of a team like that. But at the same time, there's still no semblance of a deep passing game unless Josh McDaniels catches them with a schemed play like he did on Wilkerson's second touchdown and sneaks a guy behind the defense off of a fake bubble screen type of concept. Other than that, it's all of it's within 20 yards of the line of scrimmage, and they're going to be an offense that's going to have to live in a condensed area.
Yeah, and they have all year. And again, it's, you don't want to say like, well, when Aguilar gets back, we're entering
Right.
week 18. You're
Yeah.
hoping to see Aguilar a little bit there. And again, we talk about, what should they do in a meaningless game or blah, 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 whether you think it's meaningless or not, whether or not Bill wants to maybe duck a team and position himself towards a different one. You
Right.
never know. That's happened before without us knowing for sure that it happened. But rather than sit players, I would really use this as an opportunity to try some things.
Yeah.
And I do think, taking a few shots downfield and doing some things that you don't normally do just to see if you can do it isn't the worst thing in the world. So if Aguilar comes back, throw him the freaking ball down the field,
Yeah.
just try it.
Especially with the way Miami plays coverage, they play a lot of cover one and a lot of cover zero, obviously, too, with Brian Flores.
Right.
They're not going to have the safeties back.
No.
They're not
So
going to
you
have them.
can look for him one-on-one
Right.
and try to get down the field.
Yeah, I think that's the part that why I don't want to sit here right now, and I don't want it to come across as negative. I just want to have it come across as being a realist. And the realist is that we didn't learn anything that we didn't already know about this team today. If the Patriots play a defense that gives Mac Jones the ability to spread the ball around, hit all the short and intermediate throws, and attack low zone coverage and all that kind of stuff, then he can move the offense up and down the field no problem. I have no concerns whatsoever. And I do think the playmaking with his legs is a helpful bonus that maybe I wasn't expecting from him when they drafted him. But we still don't think that they can attack down the field in man coverage. I still didn't have anything proved to me today that even against the Jaguars team that they were going to be able to do that. And there's one play in the first half that really stood out to me. I tweeted about it. They got single high. Mac checks into a pass. He goes from under center to shotgun. They spread the formation. They have this single high look. They send Kendrick Bourne in the slot on a slot fade and Jacoby Myers on a deep corner route from the other slot. And they have a shot play dialed up. This is their chance to try to attack something down the field. And Mac Jones takes a sack. Yeah, he got the roughing the passer penalty. But the point is that he either didn't see it, didn't like it, or didn't want to push it to a single down the field, but somebody had single coverage, whether it was Bourne or Myers. Watching live, I thought it was Bourne on the slot fade, but somebody had single coverage down the field. And at some point in time, you do need to give your guy a chance to make a play, right? And maybe this week wasn't the week because ball security and just playing a clean game is probably the best way to go. But at some point in time, you're going to have to see him push that ball. And it wasn't like he got sacked instantly. He had time to maybe make a throw there and got sacked later on in the down. So I'm still in the same spot that I was with this team after last week. I just hope from a positive standpoint, I hope that some of these positive vibes, some of this mojo, some of this momentum, the Patriots can ride it similarly to how they did in week 7 with the Jets.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the problem. If I'm trying to go back on the schedule just to think like what was the last game you learned something about the Patriots, because there's quite a few you stack them up where we haven't learned a ton about them.
Yeah.
But thankfully, they faced 4 rookie quarterbacks this year. They got the Jets a couple of times. They got Houston. They got Jacksonville. They got Tennessee when they were hurting at their best. The schedule gods were relatively kind to the Patriots just in terms of how things lined up. They got Buffalo in those conditions, and they've been able to stack up enough wins where now they are going to the playoffs where theoretically anything can happen. You did mention, and again, we can get into this game a little bit. Actually, before we move on to Buffalo, I'll get into it a little bit. Anything you saw from Mac that concerned you? As you said, there's good game manager stuff. I don't want to go negative on it either. I would like, even on the intermediate stuff, to see a little more zip. And it still isn't there. And I don't know if he may be a guy who throws the ball just as hard as it needs to be thrown to get there,
I think
because
that's part of it. Yes.
because his overall timing is good. But even on the first throw, just a little out to Wilkerson, who had a 3-4-5 yard cushion, and it just barely got there in time before the defender. And you're just like, wow, that's that's a throw you should be able to just drill into an open receiver, and it just kind of floats out there sometimes. So I wonder from your vantage point, how much of that you think is Mac exactly that? Like his receivers have said to his credit, the ball's like a pillow when he
Yeah,
throws
very
it.
catchable.
So
Yeah.
he's trying to throw catchable balls. I wonder how much of that, but to the but I do have a bunch of friends who will text me the whole game and they're like, oh my God, noodle arm. I wonder how much of that is by design or how much of it is, just we know he doesn't have a Justin Herbert arm, but how much of that is intentional?
I have zero concern about his arm strength on the short stuff, or even if he has to throw across the field from the far hash
Just
and
to
get it
press it
into the
downfield.
flat. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really those throws from the 15 to 25-yard range where he needs to dot it, right? He's got
Yep.
zone coverage. He's got too high. Like there was one throw to Hunter Henry along the sideline that was probably his worst and only real negative play, I would say, of the entire game, where he was trying to force it into the cover 2 hole, and he might have had a chance on it if he had really zipped it in there, but he just didn't have enough gas on the ball to get it there. You look at the deep middle of the field, right? Why the Patriots can't really access the area between the safeties or over the middle of the field on deep over routes and deep crossing routes, because I don't know if he has the full velocity yet to be able to just uncork one right in between two zone defenders or something like that. Now, I don't have huge problems with his arm strength, especially now, because I do think that can be developed and worked on with cleaner and more consistent mechanics. But overall, I look at that Buffalo game plan defensively, and they were hugging up on receivers,
Yep.
the check downs, making sure he wasn't going to just dump it off for Brandon Bolden for 9 yards on first down. Right, they were really coming up the field and hugging up on those check down receiver options, playing tight man coverage on third down. All those. I know Matt can make a throw against zone, right? I know he can see, okay, double A gap pressure. They bail out of it. It's cover 2. He hits Jacoby Myers on the leverage route in the cover 2 hole. I know he can make that read. I know he can make that throw. He's been doing it all year long. He made the same exact throw later on in the game to Hunter Henry. No problem with that whatsoever. It's 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5. He hits Jacoby coming across the middle of the field on the crossing route. I know he can make that throw. He's great at that throw. The question is when the defense has a game plan and the personnel to design a plan and a blueprint where that throw is no longer there, right? And they say you're not going to throw Jacoby Myers on the crossing route on levels or mesh on third down, and you're not going to throw into the voids into cover 2 because we're going to squeeze those. Where is Mac going to be able to go from the football from there? And this is not just a Mac Jones problem. I want to stress that too. It's also the receivers that they have working on the outside too that are pretty limited in that capacity as well. So again, I think he played the game he needed to play here today, to have a clean operation, no turnovers, 3 touchdowns to 0 INTs. There was a point in the third quarter right after he threw the touchdown pass to Christian Wilkerson on the bubble screen play where you could tell he was feeling himself, right? He was jacked up. He was really into it. He was vibing, and that positive momentum will hopefully continue throughout the rest of the season. And that if we are on this show in a couple weeks and the Patriots won a playoff game in Buffalo or wherever they end up going, we're going to look back at week 17 and say, this is when Mac got his swagger back, right? This is
Good.
when he got his mojo back. But I still think that they are who they are.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much all that I kind of take away from this game.
My favorite Mac is still second half Indy.
Yeah.
It really is, just for the
Yeah.
level of high quality throws, some of which were down the field.
Yes.
That was the most I felt that he pressed it.
Yeah.
So that's why I was
even
actually
his
a little
throws.
bullish off that game, and that's
Yeah.
why I was so bummed about last week.
Yeah.
Just in terms of his overall performance, because
Even the throws at the intermediate level against Indy, he's throwing them layered throws against zone coverage, right?
yeah,
Fitting it over the first level and in
yes,
front of the third level of the
really
defense,
nice stuff.
and fitting it in there. Those are the types of throws they need him to make, right?
Yeah,
He needs to be able to make those drive throws, is what they're called, right? A deep ball is the teardrop, right?
yeah,
That's when we throw a pillow over the top. When you have to drive the ball into a 15 to 20-yard window, that is when they need what I need to see from Mac Jones on a consistent basis. I know he can throw to open receivers against
yeah.
zone coverage against Jacksonville. I mean, no one's questioning whether or not he's an NFL starting caliber quarterback that can beat a bad Jaguars team. Clearly, he can.
Yeah, and when I say this stuff about Mac, it's actually because I still believe there's a version of him that could do a lot more if he had to. I do
Yeah.
think he's been managed. I do think if you do that, you're susceptible to more mistakes, and I realize that's why they haven't.
Yeah.
The funny part is when I'm not bullish on his performance, I'm actually bullish on him. I think he's their best offensive player. And I don't even think it's particularly close.
Yeah.
And so I would like to see more opportunities. That's why I was hoping there'd be a game or two where you'd see, more of those types of throws like we saw Indy second half, because you need them in the playoffs. You're not going to be able to do, there's not going to be a free ride there. So
Right.
it's kind of empty calories if you build to this point, get your 11 wins, get into the playoffs, but you're just not equipped to do what it's going to take to be able to win there. I guess maybe they're hoping for really miserable weather, high winds, who knows what, and then they can kind of employ their Buffalo game plan again when they get there. So, we'll see how it goes. I definitely feel a little bit better about a Buffalo rematch.
I feel great about a Buffalo rematch, honestly.
I really do too.
Because they played a perfect game against the Patriots last week. Josh Allen played perfectly. The defense played perfectly.
And they emptied both barrels. I think it's like whether I think it's more likely than not that Belichick would come back with something to counter what those guys did. And so I don't feel bad about it at all. I actually think that that's a potentially winnable game, and really any game is a winnable game.
Yeah.
There's no teams that are blowing you away here right now. So, we'll see what we'll see how that one goes. As far as this game, couple other nuggets. Before the game, obviously, the N'Keal Harry
Continues.
healthy scratch. Again, we're not counting on a lot from N'Keal Harry, but it definitely is felt like almost closure to his Patriots career. I don't want to be hyperbolic here, but it's very likely this is the last time we've seen N'Keal Harry. If he's going to be this is a person they gave a shot to start when they were down receivers and when Aguilar was out. And now he goes, while Aguilar is still out, to a healthy and active. He was on the injury list earlier in the week. He got removed, which means he's healthy, and they sat him in favor of Christian Wilkerson, who had 2 touchdowns, incidentally. That's it. When Aguilar comes back, I mean, that's it.
I think you can see the difference in the offense when there's some speed at that.
When there's something out there. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I think with N'Keal Harry, it gets so plodding at times, and you feel so slow and so bogged down by the lack of speed at the X position. And when you put even a guy like Christian Wilkerson, who in training camp showed that he could separate and show that he could get open. Now we saw at the end of the game on the deep pass from Mac, the Achilles heel of Christian Wilkerson, and why he lost a lot of steam in training camp towards the end of camp was because of the drops. And that is a problem for him, is finishing the play, is catching the ball and finishing the route. But at the same time, just a little bit of speed at that spot and playmaking at that spot really helped the offense out a whole lot in this game. And I look at some of the plays that he made in the red zone, obviously, right? The crossing right of the back end line of the end zone. I'm not sure if N'Keal Harry runs away from his guy as easily as Christian Wilkerson did. Now the guy get caught up in the trash and kind of got picked off a little bit. But at the same time, he still got to the spot and he beat his man there pretty cleanly and gave Mac a ton of room and time to make that throw. You also saw some nice sits down and into void coverages and of zone coverages and stuff like that, and finds those soft spots, or he has off coverage on the outside and cover 3, and he just runs a quick hitch and gives Mac Jones that option underneath the defense. So having some semblance of separation skills, burst. I mean, I think that's obviously they were hoping Nelson Aguilar was going to give them that, but tenfold, right, to a much bigger degree. But with N'Keal Harry, I have a hard time envisioning that he's going to play again for the Patriots, not even outside of what Wilkerson did. Wilkerson now possibly passed him on the depth chart, and that means that N'Keal Harry's X number 3 now, right? Because Nelson Aguilar is number 1, Wilkerson's number 2, so N'Keal Harry is potentially 3rd at that spot on the depth chart now. I just have a tough time envisioning how you can look at it and say that N'Keal Harry deserves reps over either one of these guys now, over Aguilar or Wilkerson. So I think this is the end of it for N'Keal Harry. And I tweeted it out before the game, but it really puts in perspective today with N'Keal Harry and Jawan Williams both healthy scratches.
And then Winovich.
How horrible that 2019 draft class turned out to be. Besides Damian Harris and I guess Jake Bailey, we can give him kudos too. But first 3 picks of the 2019 draft, 2 of them are the top 2 picks, both in the top 50, both healthy scratches for this game. So
And
that's
Winovich hadn't played a snap in weeks. He did play
right.
more today, but
Yeah.
that was he the second, third rounder along with Harris that year?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was the second. They had 4 top 100 picks. The only
Yeah.
one that's panned out is Damian Harris so far in that draft.
Yeah. So I mean that is rough, and it is what it is. But that's that's a tough one seeing N'Keal here, and I'm not going to blame last week's loss on N'Keal Harry, but you're
No.
right. I'm not blaming anything. I'm just saying you're right though. When you open the game with him, in the X receiver slot, that basically just, gives the defense, they're like, great, don't have to worry about
especially
anything,
last week they come out in some spots because Kendrick Bourne has a limited role, basically only playing on third down. They come out in 21 or 12 personnel, and they have N'Keal Harry, Jacoby Myers, Johnny
yeah.
Smith, Hunter Henry in the back, or Jakob Johnson in the back, and that's got to be the slowest collection of skill players in the entire league, right? I mean, there's nothing slower than that. Those 5 guys together on the field, so that's a problem for the Patriots. And Wilkerson's I think a 4.48, 4.49 guy. It's not like he's got 4.3 speed, but even some semblance of speed and ability to get over the top and separate gave the Patriots something from that X spot this week. And what a difference it made in the offense. I know it's a totally different opponent and totally different level of opponent, but just having somebody that can run by a defender a little bit, it just made it a whole lot
Right.
better.
You're right. Wilkerson was like a 4.45 guy out of college, but he's definitely more fluid. He has enough size at 6'1". That's how sad it is. A Christian Wilkerson looks like an obvious, to your eyes, upgrade over Harry. And so that's it. You close two careers might have ended today. N'Keal Harry's and Antonio Brown's. We'll talk about Antonio later. A lot of people here are wondering if the Pats are going to take a flyer.
Oh, no way.
Evan's going to tell you exactly why he wants Antonio back in just a little bit.
No.
But let's look ahead to that potential matchup with Buffalo.
Can we talk about the defense too for a second?
Yeah, you can do whatever you want. It's your nickel.
Okay, so let's just real quickly talk about the defense though, because
what did you like?
What I liked is the pressure on the quarterback, right? That was, I thought, a big difference between this week and last week, was that the Patriots were able to apply pressure on Trevor Lawrence and get him off his spot a little bit more. You saw right out of the gate, you have the linebacker twist from the second level. Dante Hightower comes through unblocked. You have the T&E stunt from Christian Barmore. He gets his first full sack of the year. So a lot more pressure on Lawrence. And the other thing that I really liked, and this is, to me, what this defense is in 2021, and that is in the back end, they are a disguise unit. They are not a lineup and let's get everybody in man coverage and mano-a-mano. We're going to take your guys out of the game just by blanketing you in man coverage. They don't have the corners anymore. They don't have Gilmore, Jackson, and McCourty, or Gilmore, Jackson, and John Jones. They don't have that cover talent. But what they can do is what we saw in Kyle Duggar's interception is they start in too high, they buzz the 2 safeties down into the middle hooks, they push Devin McCourty back to the post, and they confuse Trevor Lawrence with that post-snap rotation, and he throws the ball right to Kyle Duggar. That is in my mind, from a coverage standpoint, is the identity of this defense as we move into the postseason. They have to win with some smoke and mirrors. They don't have the talent in the back end to just line up across from you, especially now that we're getting into the playoffs and some of these receivers and the talent on the other side of the ball that they're going to be facing, whether it's Buffalo or Cincinnati, who's got Chase and Boyd and Mixon and T. Higgins and all these really good players at receiver as well. You can't just play straight up man coverage anymore. You don't have that ability or that talent in the cornerback room. So disguise, rotations, Being able to do different things like that, I think, is especially looking at Phillips, Duggar, McCourty, that safety trio gives them so much flexibility to do different things with the coverage shell, right? They can play single high, they can play two high, they can change all of the different things post snap because they have three guys that can basically play anywhere. They can basically be they're interchangeable parts. And they're going to have to coach it. This is going to have to be Belichick and Steve and Matty P, and those guys are going to have a great plan, and they're going to have to scheme it up, and they're going to have to coach these guys to a different level of coverage ability. Because we saw last week, you get into third down against Buffalo, and you put Miles Bryant on Isaiah McKenzie in man coverage, and you see how it goes, right? I mean, we've already seen this movie before. You look at the Dallas game, and Jalen Mills on CeeDee Lamb, blouses, right? Game over. One play,
Right.
game over. Even against Tampa Bay, although they held their own, I thought for the most part in that game, that was with Jonathan Jones. And I still thought that there was a lot of opportunities for Tampa Bay down the field, but it was rainy and the conditions were a little bit off, and Tom Brady was a little bit off because of the situation. Every time they've tried to go into a game and play man coverage outside of the windstorm in Buffalo, they've not held up particularly well. If they play man coverage on 25-30% of their snaps, they can get away with it, right? Third down man coverage, they can get away with that. When they start playing man coverage on half the snaps like they used to do in the prime days with Gilmore and all those guys, they get exposed. They have weaker coverage players now that you can pick on. You can pick on Miles Bryant. You can pick on Jalen Mills in man coverage. Zone disguise, coverage rotations, smoke and mirrors. That's what this team is now in the secondary, and that's what they're going to have to continue.
Which quarterbacks can't you do that against? That
in the AFC?
That the AFC.
I honestly don't see any that you can't do that against. I don't think any one of these quarterbacks in the AFC playoff picture is truly a guy that wins between the ears, right? I mean, I don't think that you look at this, Mahomes, Burrow, who's a young quarterback, obviously Allen, Wentz, Derek Carr now in the playoffs, Tannehill. I think you can do that for everybody. Honestly, I don't see a Brady or a Breeze or somebody like that that's going to stand in the pocket. Even Dak Prescott had great success against their zone coverages early this year. I don't see a cerebral quarterback in this bunch. I see a lot of playmakers, right? A lot of really good arm talent, mobility, out of structure, all that kind of stuff. I think you can get Josh Allen to hold the ball in zone coverage and be a little bit confused by some of the rotations. What you can't do is play man coverage and give Josh Allen all day to sit back there and scan the field and make throws down the field against Miles Bryant. That's what you can't do. So I think whether it's Cincinnati, it's Buffalo, they have to fall back on that formula. It being a disguised defense, being very zone heavy, but changing the shell, right? Sometimes it's cover two, sometimes it's cover three, sometimes it looks like man, but it ends up being zone, right? You have to be able to mirror those lines and blur those lines for these quarterbacks. I think they will have a tougher time going up against you.
So, not particularly worried in this as far as anything goes forward with any quarterback that they would face here.
I'm not particularly worried if they play the game that best suits their personnel. What worries me is that what we saw last week is they got stubborn and they stayed in man coverage against Buffalo when it wasn't working. Right? That's what worries me, is that at some point in time, whether it's Bill coming down with the hammer over the top on Steve or it's somebody else, they're going to have to say, guys, we got to get out of man, right? We can't play man against these dudes. We can't keep up. We don't have the guys that can keep up. We don't have the horses that can go and take Diggs and Davis and McKenzie and Beasley and all these. We don't have it, right? We don't have that cover talent. So if they buy into this game plan and they buy into this formula for their defense and they stay zone heavy, then I think that they can cover, and I think that they can protect the back end. If they get into man coverage like they did against Buffalo last week, I think it's going to be a short playoff for the Patriots.
All right.
Now take it wherever you want to go.
No, that's fine. I don't disagree. But let's just look at right now. I'm trying to see what would happen to dislodge Patriots or Buffalo from the 4 and the 5 slot, and just how likely that is.
It's not very likely. I mean, well, what could is if the Patriots lose and the Colts win, the Colts would have the head-to-head tiebreaker over New England, so that would move them up a ring. So I think I would move Patriots back to 6 and then the Colts to 7, if I'm looking at this correctly. But those top 4 teams are locked in terms of the division winners, right? So those you're not going to jump into the top 4. So if the Patriots win the 5 seed, I believe if everybody just wins out and everybody holds serve next week in Week 18, including Cincinnati.
I think that's it, right? Because
Yeah,
that's everyone's got to hold serve. I'm trying to see if Buffalo can climb here.
they could climb it if Cincinnati loses, right? If Cincinnati loses their game, I don't think. Well, they do have the head-to-head against Kansas City. I believe they beat Kansas City earlier in the year. So if Kansas City or Cincinnati were to lose next week, I think that Buffalo will move up. So that could flip flop some things. But more likely than not, looking at the playoff machine and spinning the dial here a little bit, it's either going to be the Bills or the Bengals, right? Those are the 2 teams that you're either going to be playing in Wild Card Weekend. And I don't think Kansas City is a possibility unless some crazy permutations happen here. So I think it's either the Bengals or the Bills for the Patriots.
Who scares you more?
The Bills. I think that when you play a team like Buffalo, who's familiar with your systems and familiar with what you do, I think that is a little bit worrisome, right? I think McDermott and Dable have at least a pretty good feel for how the Patriots are going to play them and what they're going to do. Now, I do like the round 3. Round 1 basically was a wash. I think round 1 was the conditions and all that kind of stuff. Now, maybe if you get a blizzard game against Buffalo the second time around, or weather conditions become a factor that favors you a little bit. But what I like is that really Buffalo, like you said earlier, they emptied the tank in this game last week, and you saw their best punch last week already, and you kind of know what they're going to do schematically to go after you. So now the Patriots can combat that. They can game plan that. And the question is, Buffalo played their game last week. Did the Patriots? I just can't imagine the Patriots will allow them to play that game again the same exact way. What really bothered me the most about the Bills game is that they turned that into flag football, right? The Patriots were passive. There was not a lot of contact in that game. There's not a lot of pass rush in that game. I don't think that is going to happen again. So I think the Patriots shouldn't be fearful of any opponent. I don't like the Bills matchup a little bit more just because with Cincinnati, it's Joe Burrow's first taste of the playoffs against a Bill Belichick defense that he's never seen before. That doesn't seem like a successful recipe. Also, Zach Taylor versus Bill Belichick might be one of the most lopsided coaching matchups in playoff history, right? We're talking about 2 guys that are on total opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of what they bring to the table. So as good as the Bengals have been looking at the last couple of weeks, I really like all of the historical influences on that game. I just can't imagine, even on the road, that Joe Burrow and Zach Taylor are going to beat Bill Belichick, right? It just doesn't. That to me, I still have a tough time adding up there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm hoping it's Cincy for one reason, and that's for a Trags reunion. Plus, maybe you'll have a free place to stay.
Yeah.
But we'll get the Lazar behind enemy lines.
Yes.
Lazar Trags preview.
I'll do a Patriots beat right from Trags' house in
That's going to be great.
Cincinnati, and then we'll have him on the post game show. It'll be great.
That's going to be great. All right, I do want to talk about it because it just around the time that the Patriots game got was getting weird, was getting boring.
Rompy, yes.
Yeah, there's a shot of Antonio Brown leaving the field shirtless in the middle of a game, and nobody had a clue what was going on. And as it turns out, nobody really knows what was going on, but we do know that Antonio Brown has probably played his last game ever in the NFL. So I don't know how this kind of percolated through the press box, Evan, while it was going on. I'm sure it became a story or it became a thing, but just your initial reaction to this. And again, we have Antonio taking off his shirt, walking off the field.
Yeah.
You saw other sideline videos which showed he was heated. Mike Evans tried to keep him on the field and talk to him. He was literally trying to keep his shirt on him and finally just gave up. Antonio took it off, waved to everybody, walks off the field at the Meadowlands, gone. Bruce Arians announces after the game, that's it. Ball game. Antonio Brown is his Bucs career is over. I have to imagine his football career is over. Surprised, not surprised, but this is, like I said, your reaction, and then we can get into the rest of it.
Okay, so I have one thing I think is really important to say about Antonio Brown.
His mental health is in question right now, so careful what you say.
Exactly. That is exactly where I was going to go with
and
it.
I agree with that too. Yep.
We need to take a step back from football for a second with Antonio Brown and recognize that Antonio Brown is not a well person. Antonio Brown has mental health issues. And the things that are happening and that have happened with Antonio Brown over the last couple of years, I know we like to make jokes. I know people like to rag on the player. Always, now he's probably going to be labeled a quitter and all this kind of stuff. There is things going on with Antonio Brown that are important to talk about, are scary to talk about, and that should come before we make any jokes about AB. Not that we're going to make jokes, but that other people do.
And I'll just double down. This is Tom Brady, and I don't have the clip ready, but this is Tom Brady's reaction to it was, I think everybody should help him in the ways he really needs it. We all love him. We care about him deeply. I think everyone should be very compassionate and empathetic towards some very difficult things that are happening. So it's the easiest thing in the world to say that he's an absolute knucklehead, because everything that he's done at face value is knuckleheaded. It's selfish. I mean, you're going back to it's vile when you're talking about some of the accusations with that led to his release from the Patriots. But there's no question that
he's mentally unstable.
There's a cause and effect issue. You don't know how much of that is because there's something going on with him that we don't know about. But right now, just the way that they're talking about it, this sounds like a general level of concern. Like, Antonio lost it today, man, and I don't know what's going on with him. So they seemed concerned, but what a frigging spectacle, and just what a ride with this guy for the past,
It also goes to show that in a lot of ways, if you're as talented and as good at football as Antonio Brown is, you get so many chances in this league to make it right and to be able to play. But I thought what Brady's comments were after the game were, let's keep Antonio in mind, essentially, and basically hinting at what we're hinting at, that he has got a lot of demons, that he's got a lot of issues that he's going through, that he's working through, and that is why we're seeing this behavior. This is not because Antonio Brown is a bad person or Antonio Brown is a violent or a person that has these episodes and these burst outs. This is a mental health issue more than anything else. And I understand that why Bruce Arians said what he said after the game, that he's no longer a Buck and all this kind of stuff, but. And I maybe Arian said some nicer things other than that, but I'm not saying that you necessarily need to keep the guy on your football team or even play him. But Antonio Brown needs help. He needs support. He needs people to have his back. And if Bruce Arians and the Bucs are turning on him and just basically saying, here's the door, I think that's a little bit disappointing, because you invested in the guy and you knew what you were getting yourself into when you signed him to your team, and now you basically don't want to back it up, right? Now that he's having these issues again and he's relapsing with this mania episodes that he has, you no longer want to have his back. And I think that it's a little bit two-sided if I'm Bruce Arians, because on one hand, he helped you win a Super Bowl last year and you were perfectly fine with that, right? You're perfectly fine with him winning you Super Bowls and playing great on the field.
Well, to be fair, from Arians' perspective, he didn't want him in the first place and got a little bit strong-armed in the situation. When he took over, he'd said there's no chance someone like that's ever coming here, and then Brady really kind of made it happen. So
I get that. I just feel like they were totally cool with Antonio Brown when things were going well, and they were willing to ride with Antonio Brown through it all because he was catching touchdowns and making plays for them on the field. Now that Antonio Brown needs Bruce Arians' help, here's the door. So
and I don't
those types of
disagree.
people, you can't be like that, right?
It's the screwed up aspect of the NFL system, especially when it came to at least the old version of the drug policy, and a person like Josh Gordon, is the environment by which someone who has some issues or some demons or different things that they might need help with, the place that they're going to get that is in a controlled environment in the infrastructure of an NFL organization that can put you through some sort of program and have you doing things and keep tabs on you
Yeah,
and
and
make
I'm
sure that
not
you're doing well.
suggesting
And
that,
when you let them go is where they just go out, where people can go off
right.
the rails. Talking out of both sides of my mouth, I will say a little bit. This is the deal you do with the devil. If you didn't want him here in the first place, you really didn't want anything to do with him because you didn't want to manage the whole package of it. And
Yeah.
so it's, as long as you play well and you're not a problem, this is the cold business of the NFL. You
I
play
have
well
no
and
problem with
you
Bruce
play well
Arians
and you're not a
saying,
problem. I'm gonna keep you. As soon as you
right.
become a problem to the rest of my team, I do not have time for it. So whether you're well or not well, I think that's kind of what he said, is I can't have this be a thing for
And
us.
that's totally fine. It's
Yeah.
totally fine that they don't want to employ Antonio Brown anymore. It's totally fine that they don't want him to play football for them anymore. But behind the scenes, and I
It
don't
would
know
be
what
nice
Bruce,
if they sought to help him out.
yeah,
Yes.
I don't know if what Bruce Arians is going to do in terms of on a personal level. But if Bruce Arians is burning that bridge football wise, totally fine with that. It's a business. It's the National Football League. There's no free handouts. But if Bruce Arians and the Bucks are saying, "Screw you, Antonio, go figure out your shit on your own," that's where I start to have an
Yeah.
issue, because you got to ride or die with your guys, right? Whether good or bad, thick and thin. If you're truly a good head football coach and a good person, then you don't just turn your back on people when the going gets tough. And I
There's
feel like that there's a little bit of that going on with the Bucks right now.
There's no doubt, and at the end of the day, it's really hard to know. There's a fair amount of speculation here. I think everybody instantly assumes something's not right, and you read the tone and the tenor of the post-game comments, particularly from Brady, and you do get the sense something's not right. You've gotten
Yeah.
the sense with other things in his life that things are not right.
Yeah, no.
He's not
And it
thinking
is the
things
Bucks'
through.
responsibility. It is your employer's responsibility to take care of the people that work for them,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
It is the Bucks' responsibility to have Antonio Brown's back. And I also don't think that sitting here and saying that, oh, well, you have to, take some accountability, Antonio Brown. Sure, he does, but I don't know. I just feel like
No.
there needs to be. I haven't gone through it personally. I've had friends that have gone through things like this or similar things, and the one thing that those types of people always need is love and support from their people that they care about, right? And people that you can't just have their back one day and then not have their back the next day. That's something that I think is where I have a problem with it with the Bucks.
Yeah. So a sad chapter, a real spectacle at the Meadowlands there. Lost in all of this. Brady just surgically goes
Yeah,
93 yards in like a minute with
yeah.
basically no receivers, with Mike Evans on one leg, no AB, a couple of slow tight ends and a couple of, who knows who. And
Shades
just,
of unicorns show ponies, right? The 2000 was it 13 Saints
yeah,
game when he comes back.
exactly.
Yeah, with
The
Austin
one to the
Collie
undrafted
and yeah,
Kembrell, was it Kembrell?
Kembrell Tompkins. Yeah,
Gambrell Tompkins gets a game winner there, pretty much. Yeah, very much like that. It was just, and he just ripped it down the field. So the MVP, I thought Brady lost his MVP today. Before the ending, and he might have
yeah,
gotten it back there with that last drive.
yeah.
An interesting thing here, I believe, if I'm not back to the Patriots here, we'll put a bow on the Antonio stuff. But back to the Patriots, I believe Tennessee is now the 1 seed. Is that right?
Correct.
So that's interesting as well. I mean, that's a team that did it without Henry, for all of this time. It could be interesting what happens if they get right heading into the playoffs. They've now got an extra week potentially to heal up and get Henry back to full strength. So that's a team that, coming back around, if you run into them, that's not going to be great either. And
It's a tough, hard-nosed, well-coached.
if the Patriots were
Yeah.
to win that as the 4 seed and all the favorites hold, that's who you'd be heading into.
Yeah.
Right, you're playing
Yeah.
that one. You're playing that one seed from the 4 spot.
Yeah.
If you do win there. So again, that is of course if all of the favorites win on the first weekend. Evan, anything else to put a bow on today? Anything you saw that stood out that was like, maybe not the story, but a story?
I think the other thing I'll say, and look, I feel bad about started being so negative about Mac. So I'll just say that look, I think that Mac has a way to play the game in the short and intermediate areas of the field where he can be really highly efficient, and it's impressive watching him see things and dissect things in those areas of the field, see pressure and be able to dissect where it's coming from and if it's coming and things like that. If he plays that contained style of game in the short and intermediate passing game, he's a really good player. The other thing I would mention about the offense, this offense is clearly more dynamic when Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson are both healthy at the same time. I
Yeah.
think both those backs, they are similar, but they're also different in some ways. I think Stevenson has a little bit more explosiveness to the edge and ability to laterally cut and make those runs and bounce them out to the outside. Those types of runs are really impressive. Harris is obviously a downhill guy that can really get downhill quickly. Saw some nice cutback lanes here from Harris today as well. That two-headed monster is really a difficult backfield, and you can rotate those guys and keep them fresh where both guys are hitting at all cylinders. And the Patriots are going to have a really good running game with those two guys back there, especially given the fact that they have a pretty strong offensive line as well.
Yeah.
So that was something that I took away from this game as well, is that this offense and this backfield and this running game, when they have a healthy Harris and Stevenson together in these games, and those two play together, they are a very, very formidable duo. It's fun to watch.
What is a bummer is it would it just it even if those guys were dominating the touches, having that little bit of James White magic would really go a long way. So that is a shame there,
Yeah,
that you don't have it. And we talked about the drop off to what Bolden, you know, Bolden has done an admirable job for all of the hate that he's gotten,
yeah,
but he's just not a playmaker. He's not going to make plays for you, and that's definitely limiting for the Patriots here. So they need more guys who can make some plays. I'd like to see a way for Ramondre to be more of the third down back as opposed to Bolden if both those guys are healthy, because I do think, as you said, he can make more people miss. He's better on the edges,
yeah.
and he is good like that. But for now, it seems like they'll roll with all three.
Yeah, and really quickly in the chat, somebody talking about Trevor Lawrence. You can't compare Mac Jones and Trevor
No, you
Lawrence
can't.
right
It's
now.
situational, right?
Yeah, if the Patriots had Trevor Lawrence, I like Mac. I think he's going to be a really good quarterback for the Patriots for a long time. The Patriots would trade Mac Jones for Trevor Lawrence. All right, like let's not get it twisted. If the Patriots had the opportunity to flip quarterbacks in this matchup today, they would also do it. They're not silly.
And Trevor Lawrence would probably be the runaway rookie of the year playing for the
Yeah,
Patriots this year. It's not just the weapons on them, it's the system and it's the coaching.
yeah.
And you've seen how many coaches destroy quarterbacks.
Yeah, the Jets are. I mean, the Jaguars, and the Jets. I guess you can put both of them in there. They're headed towards that because you see today just a couple of flashes of instances where Trevor Lawrence makes some really high level plays and downfield throws, and you can easily see the talent, right? But then he just has to sometimes just do everything around him and just too much to do, right? There's just too much for him to do at this stage of his career.
Yeah, he can't. This is a excuse me. It's a JV operation over there.
Yeah, yeah.
And they never put him in a position to succeed. But people do feel better about it because they can be like, look, Mac's better than Lawrence.
Mac is better than Lawrence right now.
He is right now.
He is right now in terms of the situation he's in. I mean, look, I know everybody's going to be pissed off at us for saying that Trevor Lawrence is better than Mac, but if you just use your eyeballs, you can see which one is more physically talented than the other. And if you switch them, I think that the Patriots are in the same position, if not better. And I think Bill Belichick would agree, honestly.
Let me ask you this: in a redraft, what would be the order of quarterbacks now?
I think it would be Trevor Mack, but I think that a lot of teams.
Trevor Mack, still not Trevor Wilson.
Yeah, I think Mack would.
You think so?
I think that Mack would go to. I think Mac would maybe go higher. I don't know. I think that
I
the
think Mac might go
NFL
ahead of Lance and Fields, but I still think Wilson goes too.
I think the NFL execs would say that they would stay pat, right? They would do it exactly the
If
same
you
way.
ask them, but if you made them take
Yeah,
lie detectors right now, I bet
I
you
don't
Mac
know.
goes 3.
Yeah, I think that what Mac has proven, and to his credit, is that he has the mental acumen and the makeup from a personality standpoint to handle the job, right? And I think that that's a big thing that maybe we don't look enough into is what exactly makes quarterbacks successful in the NFL, right? It's from a physical standpoint. It's accuracy and decision making from the pocket. He checks both of those boxes. The other thing that I think is really important is being able to handle it, right? Just being able to handle uh, 18 weeks of being an NFL quarterback is not easy. And being able to do that and being able to shoulder the load and all those types of things. And Mac Jones is able to do all those things and has done all those things all year long. So I don't know if those GMs, I don't think, do it any differently just because they're stubborn fools and they probably do it exactly the same. If I was redrafting the draft, I would still say that Trevor would be the number one pick, but I would take Mac second if I was the Jets, just because you can have all the arm talent and athleticism in the world with Zach Wilson, but I just don't see the same level of intangible qualities with Wilson as I do with Mac. So I have a tough time thinking that anybody would disagree with that.
Fair enough. All right, so I think we're gonna put a bow on it. Thanks for
Yes.
hanging. Sorry we were late, guys, but honestly, Evan had work to do and he was out there. And the Patriots were relishing the victory. And
Yes.
Mac and Bill took a little bit of extra time. But again, the Patriots have clinched a playoff spot with their win and Miami's loss. They got the Dolphins again next week. If they win that game, they stay in the 4 slot. Unless, of course, Buffalo loses, then they would flip-flop. But it looks like if they were able to hold and the Bills win, that we're going to be looking potentially at Patriots Bills on a wild card weekend, first weekend of the year,
I love it.
out in Buffalo. So
I'm not saying that it's been coming from the Bills internally. Externally, this rivalry between the fan
the
base,
fan bases love it.
it's been getting a lot of
Yeah.
getting a lot of fun. I saw today one of my pals named Jerry, who is on Buffalo radio, and over there said that he thinks that he's not afraid of the Patriots at all in the playoff rematch with New England. So I was going back and forth with him a little bit about that. I was like, how, you're not afraid at all of Bill Belichick in a playoff game? I mean, come on, like. Let's be real here. You guys played one perfect game against the Patriots last week. It's the first time you beat New England in a meaningful game in 20 years. And now all of a sudden you're not afraid of them at all. I know that that's a lie. So I would love it. It's the grudge match, right? You have you're 1-1, right? You know, You've played games the first 2 times on the other team's terms. The Patriots were able to run the ball in the first game. The second matchup went more in a Buffalo game script. Let's see what it looks like mano a mano, third time, all of it on the line, win or go home. That to me is exactly what I would want to see. I no offense to the Bengals or whatever, but
No, it's fun.
the theater there is just nowhere near as good.
No, again, rivalries are what makes sports. Hatred is what makes
Yeah.
sports, you know? So Patriots may not have burning, deep, hatred for the Bills, but they hate us, they hate
Yeah.
you. And that makes it better. It makes it spicier. So that makes it a lot of fun, and it'd be up there, it'd be hostile. And it'd be just good playoff football. So I agree. That'd
Yes.
be fun to watch. Once again, 50-10 here. We just want to remind everybody a couple things. If you're watching and you don't already subscribe to our YouTube channel, please do. It really helps us out. Just click the subscribe button, turn on your notifications. You're going to know when we go live. We do it after every game, naturally. When there's breaking news, of course, we do that as well. And multiple times during the week with our Patriots podcast, both Evan's podcast and the Greg Bedard Patriots podcast, as well as all of Evan's reports down from Foxborough. You're only going to get them on this channel, so please subscribe. And sorry, again, I'm battling this cold all week. CLNSmedia.com for Evan's written material. He'll have something up on this game right after the game. Once again, Patriots win 50-10, their second 50 burger of the season. They clinch a playoff spot. Miami next week, and then we think on to Buffalo. So again, thanks for watching. Happy New Year, everybody. We'll see you guys next.